pour water on people's heads.
Water where?
On people's heads.
Oh.
There was a devotee taking the Charnamrita water and pouring it out.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, okay. Now I get it.
Yeah. I said, please don't pour water on people's heads, so. Okay, sorry. Also, if anyone knows who just dumped all those flowers on the ground. Okay, but is somebody going to take care of that? Okay. Okay, great. Excellent. Sorry, I'm always meditating on the property, you know. That's the problem with living here. That's the price you pay for having me live here. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunati Ravanachari Yamunati Ravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunati Ravanachari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Asatara Satashri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai, Mathura Dhama Ki Jai, Navadvip Mayapur Dhama Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Jai, Gangamai Jamuna Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskachade Satanane. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Manchakalpajubhishcha Kripasnavyevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhi Namo Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's April 19, 2026 in New Goloka, Hillsborough, North Carolina. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 73, Text 11. Before we read the verse, I just want to mention that today is actually a Tritiya, which is supposed to be an auspicious day for anything. Lots of people get married today. They say anything you start today will be successful. It's also the appearance day of Lord Parasuram. And just wanted to speak for just a couple minutes about Lord Parasuram. So King Gadi had a daughter named Satyavati. But there was a Brahmin, Richika, who wanted to marry her, and the king said, I don't want my daughter married to a Brahmana, I want my daughter married to a Kshatriya. And it used to be people were very particular about making sure that people who got married had the same nature. And one of the reasons was psychological compatibility, because people in different varnas see the world differently. They have their concept of dharma is somewhat different from each other. But the other reason, people sometimes think that in Vedic times, women were just like domestic servants. But actually, women also have varna. You can't talk about varna compatibility of husband and wife unless the husband and the wife have varna. Does that make logical sense? So people say, oh, women don't have varna. Then why is there this consideration? Why is the king saying, oh, my daughter should marry someone of the same nature? And varna means, Krishna says, guna and karma. That means the woman also has activities according to her varna. That's all logical, right? All right. So one reason for marrying people of the same varna is that they would assist each other. So if the man's running a kingdom, the woman helps him run a kingdom. If he's running a school, the woman helps him run a school. That she also has her career as part of her relationship with her husband, that this was the ideal. And it's not that the woman becomes the varna of the husband, that she changes her varna by marrying him. That's an absurdity. All right, so the king, he's like, I don't want my daughter to marry this Brahmana. He says, you can marry my daughter if you bring a whole bunch of special horses. And so Richika went to Varuna and he got these horses. The king thought it was impossible. You understand? He thought he was giving him an impossible task. But he brought the horses and he marries this girl, Satyavati. And after they're married, Satyavati says, I'd like to have a child. But King Gadi's wife also went to her son-in-law and said, can you prepare a special payasa? So I'd like to also have another child. So they both wanted a son. Mother-in-law and wife both went to this Brahmana, Richika, at the same time, and said, we'd both like to have sons. So the Brahmana, with mantras and so forth, he prepares this two payasas, one that will produce a Brahmana son and one that will produce a Kshatriya son. So for the Kshatriya son, one was for his mother-in-law, and the Brahmana son, one was for his wife. And then he says, okay, you each drink this, and he went to take a bath. So the mother-in-law, right, that she goes to her daughter, and she says, your husband probably likes you more than he likes me. So he's probably made a better one for you. Would you switch them with me? So the daughter switches with her mother, and then they drink it, and then he comes back, and they tell him what they've done, and he says, you idiots, you're going to get the wrong kind of kid. He tells his mother-in-law, he said, now you're going to get a very scholarly Brahmana, and he says to his wife, now you're going to have a fierce Kshatriya as your son. And she's like, well, that's not going to work very well. She said, can you adjust things? He said, all right, it will be your grandson. It won't take effect to your grandson. So their son was Jamadagni, and when he was killed by Kartavir Arjuna, his son, Parasuram, he wanted to punish the Kshatriyas, and so therefore he manifested this nature as a Kshatriya. So Prabhupada refers to Parasuram as someone who apparently changed his varna because he was born to a Brahmana father. But actually he acted like a Kshatriya, right? But there's this back story behind it. And Parasuram destroyed 21 generations of Kshatriyas who were corrupt. So we certainly have the situation in the world today where a lot of our world leaders are corrupt, yes? I think that's indisputable. That not all, we have some good people in political positions, but in many countries of the world, in many counties, states, towns, we have corrupt leaders. And we can certainly remember Parasuram and pray to Parasuram that he can manifest his energy to destroy corruption in government. And speaking of corruption in government, we are going on to discuss the kings who were imprisoned by a corrupt government, by Jarasandhar, and who've now been released, and they're seeing Krishna, and we're going on today with text 11 of their prayers to Krishna. Mrigatrisnam yata bala manyata udakakshayan evam vaikarikim mayam ayukta vastu chakshate. Please chant. Mrigatrisnam yata bala manyanta udakakshayam evam vaikarikim mayam ayukta vastu chakshate. Mrigatrisnam yata bala manyanta udakakshayam evam vaikarikim mayam ayukta vastu chakshate. Mrigatrisnam yata bala manyata udakakshayam evam vaikarikim mayam ayukta vastu chakshate. Mrigatrisnam yata bala manyanta udakakshayam evam vaikarikim mayam ayukta vastu chakshate. Mrigatrishnam, a mirage, yata, as Balaha, men of childish intelligence, Manyante, consider, Udaka, of water, Ashayam, a reservoir, Evam, in the same way, Vaikarikim, subject to transformations, Mayam, the material illusion, Ayuktaha, those who lack discrimination, Vastu, substance, Chakshate, see as, BBT translation, just as men of childish intelligence consider a mirage in the desert to be a pond of water, so those who are irrational look upon the illusory transformations of Maya as substantial. So there's no BBT commentary. Srila Sanatana Goswami has a commentary. Unintelligent beings like deer consider a mirage to be water. The unintelligent person considers sense objects, transformations of Maya, which are not really useful, vastu, to be useful. The example of the deer and the mirage is used to explain the useless aspect of enjoying material objects rather than to explain that matter is unreal. And what Srila Prabhupada says on this verse in Krishna book, under the influence of your illusory energy, such foolish so-called ruler or king, they're speaking about themselves, becomes falsely proud of his position, just like a foolish person who considers a mirage in the desert a reservoir of water. Foolish persons think that their material possessions will give them protection. Engaged in sense gratification, they falsely accept this material world as a place of eternal enjoyment. Migatrishna mitabala manyanta udakashayam evam vaikari kimayam ayukta vastu chakshate. So Mriga it literally means thirsty animals or thirsty deer. Mriga can mean deer or animals in general. So I remember as a child always being entranced by the mirage on the road as the car was driving, right? I was driving in the car the other day with my great-grandsons, and we were seeing a mirage on the road. You know, the way the sun hits the asphalt, it looks like there's water, and as you drive, it looks, and Abhimanyu said, that's a mirage, right? That's a mirage. Right? So Prabhupada often talks about this, how the animals in a desert, they'll see this shimmering, the sun, the heat creates this shimmering, and it keeps going forward, just like in a car on a hot day where the mirage keeps going forward. And so in the desert, it keeps going forward, and the animals chase it until it dies of thirst. So I've given this example many times, how once when I was doing a what they call a dry fast, I was fasting from food and water, doing a nirjal fast. I took a little rest, and in my dream, I was eating this feast, and I was drinking water, and I was drinking, a cup of water in my dream, and another cup of water in my dream, another cup, and finally in my dream, I took a gallon jug of water and started chugging it. And then in my dream, I thought, what's going on? Why am I still thirsty? And then I woke up and I thought, I was drinking dream water. So that's, the material world is compared in the scriptures to a dream or to a mirage. So a mirage or a dream has some existence. You can't say it's not real, but it's not the reality. And so therefore, when we're trying to enjoy material life, after a point you say, what's going on? Like I asked in my dream, what's going on? Why am I drinking, and I'm still thirsty? Right? I remember reading this one famous rock star. He had become like very, very rich by the time he was 25, very famous, surrounded by so many beautiful women and anything he could want. And then he said, is that it? Is that all there is? Like, how come I'm not satisfied? What's going on here? What's wrong? How come it's not working? Why aren't I satisfied? It looks like I should be satisfied. It seems like I should be. I think I told this story before. I was a teenager, and I was taking care of these two kids in the summer. Long story, but anyway, it was like a nanny from my first job. And so one night when the kids were asleep, they were being taken care of by their grandparents, and the grandparents were out. So I was sitting there thinking, what's the purpose of life? I thought the purpose of life is to be happy, which Prabhupada also says, by the way, in a lecture in South America. So I thought, well, am I happy? And I made a list of all the things I had in the world. You know, I have good parents, and I have this and that. I get good grades in school, and all these lists of things. And I looked at the list, and I said, well, I must be happy. But it wasn't really satisfying. You know, if you've got to convince yourself that you're happy, I guess I'm happy. So material enjoyment is very frustrating. And different types of people, the karmis, the gyanis, the yogis, and the bhaktas, they respond to this in different ways. And how will we as devotees, how are we going to find the real water? That is the question. So material life is frustrating. In his analogy of the forest of material enjoyment, Jud Bharata tells King Rahugana in 5.13.5, he said the materialist wants to acquire water, but he's just illusioned by a mirage. Prabhupada, in a lecture on the Nectar Devotion in 72 in Vrindavan, he said, it is compared with the mirage, just like the desert. There is a reflection of water, but actually there is no water. Similarly, all this perverted reflection of Shantaras, Dasyaras, Sakyaras, this is just like mirage. It is simply a reflection. It has no actual fact. So I'm thinking I'm going to be happy in this world. I'm going to have someone as my spouse. I'm going to have someone as my child. I'm going to have someone as my friend. I'm going to have someone as my servant, or someone as my master. But are we fully satisfied by these relationships? Can anyone say, I'm perfectly, absolutely happy, but because they're a mirage? And really nice conversation Prabhupada had in 75 in Atlanta. He says, there is spiritual and material. The material is simply a phantasmagoria. It is imitation of the reality. This is described in the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, Urdhva Mulam Adha Shakam, which means what? Urdhva Mulam. The root is up, yes. Prabhupada says that is called mirage. In the desert, the animal is finding water. There is no water. But there is water, but not in the desert. That they do not know. So this is just like desert, this material world. And everything is reflection like the water. But there is no water. It is only reflection. Tejo vadi mid vinamayo yatra tri sargo misha, Bhagavatam 1:1:1. Tejo vadi mid vimi maya. Here everything is a transformation of the three things, fire, water, and earth. But it looks like reality, just like the mirage. That is also teja vadi mid vinimayam. By reflection of the sun falling on the sand, it looks like water. This is the best example. And the animal is running after water, running. When he becomes fatigued, dies, that's all. The devotee says, this is one of my favorite. It's like one of these things where Prabhupada says something that you go, what? The devotee says, but here in the material world, when we look for water, we actually take it and drink it. Prabhupada says, that is not water. That you do not know. What a statement. That is not water. That you do not know. So how do different people respond to this? Everybody runs into this. Everybody runs into this disappointment, correct? You grow up and your parents say, if you have a lot of toys, you get good grades, you know, you have sports, you have good friends, you keep good health, you'll be happy. If you find a good romantic partner, you get a good degree from a prestigious university, you'll be happy. You get a good job with high status, you'll be happy. You get a big house with a big yard, you'll be happy. How many members of our congregation have come here to America for that purpose? Practically everyone, yeah. I'll get a better education, I'll get a bigger house, and then I'll be happy. And it doesn't work. So how do people respond? Now, Prabhupada says in his introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, which he spoke in 66, he says, the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. It's a shadow. But from the shadow, we can understand there must be a reality. From the shadow, you can understand there must be a reality. And in 75 in Chicago, Prabhupada gives a really interesting talk about how different people respond to this. He says the karmis, they have no knowledge. They have been described as mudhas. They're running after shadow, shadow, that's all. And the gyanis, they understand that this is shadow, mithya. So the shadow means there must be a reality. Shadow means without reality, how can there be shadow? So they are searching after that reality. Brahma Satchan Jagam Mithya. They understand this is shadow, find out where there's water. So the Gyanis are also in the darkness because they don't know where there is water. They simply know that because there is shadow, therefore there must be somewhere the reality. This is a Gyani or Yogi. And the Bhakta, they know where there is real water. That's all. That's the difference. The karmis are like animals. They are after shadow water, running, 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 exhausted and finished. That is karmi. And Gyani, they understand this is shadow, but there is reality. But they do not know where is that reality. But a devotee knows this is shadow, but it is the shadow of the reality, and they know where the reality is. So materialistic persons, they're frustrated, but they're going anyway. Well, it's not working, but this is the best there is, so I'm just going to be satisfied with that, right? If you've ever talked to materialistic people, that's what they'll say. It's a lousy world, nothing's fair, everything's miserable, everything's temporary, everything's fall apart, nothing's satisfied, but I'm just going to enjoy whatever I can here. And the Gyanis, they're like, no, this is not reality. This is not reality. There is some reality. There's something that's just not this. They're just not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. And the yogis, also the same. The Gyanis are trying to do it by mental detachment, and the yogis are trying to do it by mechanical means, but they're both like, let me just get detached, 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 detached. But the devotees say, okay, we want to get attached to the reality. We want to drink the real water. It's just fascinating when Prabhupada says, what you're drinking is not real water, but you don't know. There's also a nice story in the Bible where Jesus is going to this woman at a well, and he's saying, I can give you living water, after which you will never thirst again. Right? He's also making this distinction. What is living water? Living water. We hear everything in the spiritual world is conscious. The chairs are conscious beings. The houses are conscious. The water is conscious. And we have some concept of that like the Ganga that comes from beyond this universe is a conscious being. The Yamuna is a conscious being. But the water is conscious. It's alive. Everything is alive. And everyone is alive. So some of you may know I'm working with this devotee, Gaurangi Gandharvika, on a simplified version of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And we were going through, we're editing now, and we were at the section where Srila Rupa Goswami is distinguishing between the components of rasa, experiencing the components of rasa separately, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and then rasa as a whole. So you can think of it, as Srila Rupa Goswami gives the example of a drink. So let's say you make a drink, you blend up, say, yogurt and bananas and different ingredients, right? So you can taste the separate ingredients. When you put them together, you're tasting a whole preparation, right? You're not really separately tasting, but you can tell, oh, there's black pepper in here, there's sugar in here, there's banana in here, but it's a full experience. And in order to have this full experience of rasa, very, very clear, Srila Rupa Goswami says, Prabhupada reiterates, you have to have all 5 components of rasa. You have to have the staibhav, the essential relationship. You have to have the impetus, your object of love, the reservoir of love, the impetus of love. You have to have changing emotions. You have to have action. And you have to have involuntary symptoms like crying, shivering. So Gaurangi Gandharvika was saying, well, if the residents of the spiritual world, the pure devotees in this world, if they're all experiencing rasa on the level of prema, in bhava you experience separately, in prema you experience as one thing. She said, does that mean they're always experiencing at least one of the sattvika bhavs, the involuntary, like crying, shivering? I said, well, they have to. That's part of rasa. And to think about that every moment one is experiencing all these elements of pleasure as a full experience in an environment where everything is alive. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about this in his Gita Mala, and we're going to look at chapter 4, song 6, verses 3 and 4. He says, Vibhava anubhava ar sattvika sancharichar stai bhave milane sundara stai bhave rasa hoy nitya tiranandamoy parama asvada nirantara. The permanent basis of ecstatic rasa is called staibhav. That's our basic relationship with Krishna, whether you see Krishna as your master, your lover, your son, so forth. And it is abounding in eternal conscious bliss. It becomes the most relishable euphoria when it mixes into a beautiful combination along with the following 4 elements: vibhava, the stimulants; anubhava, the activities, the services; sattvika, the disruptive ecstatic symptoms; sanchari, the transitory emotions. And his next verse is Jai rasa prapancha gata jara kavye prakasita parama raser asamurti. Asamurti nitya hoy adarshana chaya hoy. You all know what chaya means, right? A shadow. Jena marichita jal spurti. Jal means water. Spurti? Appearance of water. When this rasa, Bhaktivinoda, what he's saying, the English translation, when this rasa finds expression in the material world, it is praised throughout the mundane poetic literature of the world, but that is only a distorted reflection of the original supreme rasa. It is not eternal, but is an imitation or shadow, like a mirage that is water in a desert. So here Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying very clearly that the original is this rasa with Krishna. The mirage is the rasas we have in this world. So there's a very wonderful verse in the Brahma Samhita about the nature of the spiritual world, which includes something of the nature of water. And someday I'll memorize this verse. Shriya Kanta Kanta Padama Purusha Kalpataravo Druma Bhumish Chintamani Ganamai Toyam Amritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Api Vamsi Priyasaki Cheda Nandam Jati Padama Api Tad Asvadayam Apicha. I worship that transcendental realm known as Swetadweep, whereas loving consorts, the Lakshmis, in their unalloyed spiritual essence, practice the amorous service of the Supreme Lord Krishna as their only lover, where every tree is a transcendental purpose tree, where the soil is made of purpose gems, where the water is nectar, where every word is a song and every step is a dance, where the flute is the favorite attendant, where effulgence is full of transcendental bliss, where the supreme spiritual entities are all enjoyable and tasty, where numberless milk cows always emit transcendental oceans of milk, and where there is eternal existence of transcendental time, which is ever present and without past or future, and hence not subject to passing away, even for the space of half a moment. That realm called Goloka is known to only a very few self-realized souls in this world. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to drink this real water? Right? I mean, it's one thing just to talk about how frustrating the material world is. That's important. We should understand that. But we don't want to be just like the Gyanis and the yogis who are like frustrated, frustrated, frustrated. We want to be drinking the real water. And we're only going to do that if we work on having a relationship with Krishna. There's no alternative to that. It's the only place we're going to find the reality. So our aim should be to awaken our relationship with Krishna. That's the whole purpose of this Krishna consciousness movement, is to reawaken our eternal relationship with Krishna. I was just hearing Prabhupada say today how it's eternal. It has no beginning. It's just a question of being reawakened. So what can we start with? Well, we can start with, I'm a soul. I'm not this body. Even if we're just beginning our Krishna conscious journey, we can say, Prabhupada once asked the devotees, how do you start your preaching? And they said, we convince people there's a God. Prabhupada says, no, first thing is to convince them that they're not this body, that they're a soul. To stop sarvupadi vinirmuktan tarpartena nirmala rishikesha rishikena sevanam bhakti ruchite. Very nice description of pure devotional service. I don't have this upadi. I'm not really, I don't really have these relationships in this world, right? We've been hearing today these quotes about how trying to enjoy these rasas in this world is like running after a mirage. I'm not really someone's wife or someone's husband or someone's mother or father or sister or brother or mother or father or employee or employer. I'm not really any of these things. I'm a soul. I've had so many roles in different lives. I've had so many, like Chitraketu's son when he comes back to life. He said, who's my mother and father? I've had so many mothers and fathers, so many families, so many jobs. I'm sure we've worked in all the varnas and all the ashrams and all the countries and maybe on so many different planets. Then I'm a soul. I'm not going to try to find my satisfaction in a mirage. I'm not going to try to find my satisfaction by, oh, does my husband love me? Does my wife love me? Does my kid love me? Does my community respect me? I'm not going to look for my pleasure there. Otherwise, it just keeps going forward. Yes, like the mirage on the road, it keeps being ahead of you. And you never get there. Oh, when I just do this, if I just bake this thing for my husband, if I just buy my wife this present, if I just do this thing for, and you never reach, like, sometimes you get a little illusion for a moment, but you don't really reach it. So no, that's not me. That's not where I'm going to find my happiness. And then the next step is, I'm a servant of Krishna, Jivera Swaraptaya Krishnera Nityadasa. Everybody can identify. It doesn't matter if you've just been chanting Hare Krishna for 2 days. I'm a servant of Krishna. That means in every situation, as Prabhupada says, right, whatever is meant to be, that, right, Krishna has his plan, whatever is meant to be, I'm doing that. Every situation I'm in, at every moment, there's some service I have in that situation as a servant. Now, my service may be to take care of this jiva who is designated in this life as my child or my wife or my parent. That might be my service right now. But it's my service to Krishna. I'm doing it because it's my service to Krishna, not because I have this designation. It's a slight difference. A slight difference in consciousness. I'm being nice to these people because Krishna asked me to be kind to all living entities, not so they'll like me and I'll get something, not so I'll think I'm a good person. I'm doing my service at the temple, not so I'll get prasadam, but so I'll please Krishna. How can I do this to please Krishna? How can I do this for Krishna's pleasure? How can I do this for my relationship with Krishna? And Krishna's always there, right? He's there, Krishna says he's there in our digestion, in our breath, in the sunlight, in our ability, in our sense of being alive, in our consciousness. He's there in every atom. I can relate to him in all circumstances. And aim to come to the highest taste. If we look at these aspects of rasa, Krishna is my object of love. He's my object of love. I was just also hearing Prabhupada say we should be trying to enjoy Krishna and through Krishna We were talking the other day about how Krishna wants us to enjoy him directly. He wants us to taste him, to see him, to smell him, to touch him. He's hankering for that. And the devotees are the reservoir of love. To please the devotees so Krishna will be pleased. Not to please the devotees in the way that I try to please my family and so forth in a mundane sense. That will disappoint us just as much. To please the devotees is part of my pleasing Krishna. As Prabhupada says, when Kunti says, break my connection to this world, Prabhupada says the real connection is soul to soul via the super soul. To have everything awaken my love for Krishna, directly, of course, the deities, peacock feather and flute and buffalo horn and Tulsi Devi and auspicious days like today, and have that be our impetus. Everything can be our impetus. The birds, which are Krishna's artistic sense, can be our impetus. The light of the moon, which Krishna says he is, can be our impetus. That Krishna is actually the taste, even in this illusory water, can also be our impetus. That everything to bring out our love for Krishna, and then express that in practical service. Not, oh, I love Krishna, I love Krishna, I love Krishna, but I don't do anything. Right? I brought this example up before. We used to have a printed publication in the pre-internet days. I think it was called Spirit. And it was mailed out to the devotees, and it had personal ads in the back. You know what personal ads are? You know, someone seeking a partner, a life partner. So one person wrote that he was looking for a wife, and he said, my favorite service is to sleep and dream about Krishna. And I was thinking, I don't think you're going to get a wife like that. So the Anubhav is how we express our love for Krishna. Right, at one time I met a woman at the Sunday Feast in Boston back in the 70s. She said, I'm a disciple of Jesus. I said, well, that's wonderful. I said, suppose you didn't tell me that. Suppose I just looked at your life. How would I know? She said, you wouldn't. So Anubhav is, we actually manifest our love for Krishna in some way. We do some practical service for Krishna. And then that should show up in our body. We should, what does Prabhupada say? We should be crying for Krishna. Like Gaur Govinda Maharaj would say, we've opened a crying school. Prabhupada said we should learn this art of crying for Krishna. So we should be experiencing something. It shouldn't be just I'm serving Krishna because I want to love Krishna, right? But we should actually be having some experience like that. And then we'll parandristva nivartate. We'll actually be experiencing, we'll be drinking the real water. And it's very easy to be detached from a mirage when you have the real water. That's easy.